So we're going to start this off with a real uplifting one here from Ryan Lowry. Besides the bias, what are you most disappointed by since Embiid has been out? What has been the most encouraging?
The most encouraging, honestly, for me, despite these last two games with the Buddy Hield experience, I'm most encouraged by what he has done out there on the floor with the playmaking and his overall play. He has to now adjust to a few more teammates where DeAnthony Melton, Kyle Lowry is here. Tobias Harris is, quite frankly, in the lineup a little bit more from when from when Buddy Hield was traded here. I think he played one, maybe two games with him before the All-Star break. So that's the one thing that I've been encouraged by, despite the last two where he has not been all that good. And they have to find a way to get that going. Outside of the Joel Embiid, what have I been most discouraged by and what has bothered me the most? I would say that because they still haven't found a way to rebound and defend at a much better rate against their opponents. Because a lot of that, as we talk about, is effort. And while it seems they're giving effort, they still seem to have the issues that they're having with the defense and the rebounding with Joel Embiid off the floor. And I know how the numbers are where they still had problems when he was on the floor with their rebounding and some with the defense, but he cleaned up so much. That said, I've seen in the past where Nick Nurse's teams with Toronto, different type of personnel where they were bigger with their wing players, where it's just not Tobias Harris and Nick Batum being, having some length and some size there. We've seen other players there with the Toronto Raptors where they've had that. The defense and the rebound still underwhelming, even without Embiid there on the floor. I thought it would be much better, much better than it has been.
Yeah, and look, comparing to those Toronto teams, that size on the perimeter
personnel
is completely different. And a lot of the players, especially before like DeAnthony came back, before Kyle was added to the roster, but when Batum was out, a lot of the players that you were filling in there were just poor rebounders historically for their careers. I don't necessarily expect Nick Nurse to change that. That would be too much to ask. So getting some players back, I do think that is going to help. DeAnthony Melton, we talk a lot about his defense and deflections and whatnot.
And he's a good rebounder.
His shooting. Rebounding does get overlooked at times. And I think that is one thing that we probably don't bring up enough. And like I said, I do think getting Batum back, things like that, will help. The downside here is that this relates to another question that we're going to talk about in a second. But with Bamba struggling and having to go small, you're just asking a lot of players who are trying to play up a position. To your point, though, they might have struggled rebounding with Embiid on the floor, but they went from like a 76% defensive rebounding rate, which is right about mid-pack, maybe 55, 60th percentile, to a 69% defensive rebounding rate, which is down in the bottom 15 percentile. So they went from solid to terrible without him on the floor. He does cover up for a lot, which, again, you would expect for a 7 foot, 300-pound guy to do so. But yeah, they've been much worse. And a big part of that is Mo Bamba is unplayable, which again we'll get to in a second.
Right.
And their options outside of that aren't great for a small ball center.
Yeah, and again, we knew this already, how important Joel Embiid is on the floor for those two things, the defense and the rebounding. But this is a point of emphasis from the coaching staff. Hey, he's out. We have to collectively, as a group, go out there and do this stuff together. It's all about the effort. And you saw it against the Cleveland Cavaliers because they made it a point of emphasis where they went out there. Tobias Harris had his 9. Paul Reed, I think, had double-digit rebounds. Mo Bamba had 5. KJ Martin came off the bench to get you 6 in that role. You had the same thing from some of the other players that were out there on the floor. They beat the Cleveland Cavaliers on the glass, and that's with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, who are very good rebounders in the front court. They beat them, and it wasn't close with the way that they did it. So, again, that's been the part where, all right, guys, he's not here to rebound. How do we rebound together? Well, you have to rebound together. You have to box out. You have to get some floorboards. You have to get these team rebounds to make sure you give yourself an extra opportunity to go down there and get some points on the offensive end and not give the opposition those offensive rebounds for those second chance points. So that has been one of the things for me that has been a problem. Did you have something separate than what I had in terms of?
Well, for me, the disappointing is Kelly. And
Sure.
since Joel went out, he's scored 15 points on 14 shots and had more turnovers and assists. You can't have a guy have that high of a usage rate and also make that many negative plays. You sort of expect that with Kelly, but you hope that he would hit the right, like earlier on in the season, people were talking about like maybe this is the right time in Kelly's career and the right situation for him to cut out some of those bad tendencies. And I think over the last couple of months, and especially since Joel Embiid's been out, we have learned that that is not the case. He is still Kelly Oubre. And Paul Reed suffers from that too. Like his hero ball stuff on offense is just driving me up a wall, in part because I know there is a useful NBA role player in there. I know, and people want to get on him for like, oh, he's not a center, he's a power forward. I disagree 100%. He is a small ball center in today's NBA. He doesn't have the floor spacing or the handles or the decision-making to play alongside another traditional center. You want him as a big man. His usefulness, his utility comes from the fact that he will crash the glass, that he can switch on defense, and that he can roll to the rim. Those are all traits of a center. Even if there are matchups he won't be good against defensively because he's undersized, you want him manning the middle. That being said, when you ask him to extend himself more and play more minutes, his limitations as a defender come out a little bit. That's fine. You can't change that. But his limitations as a decision maker are what frustrates me, because that feels like that should be a little bit more controllable. And like we've talked about a lot, like him doing step back Dirk fadeaways, or him trying to slip every screen, or him trying to take everyone off the dribble. There's just too much of it. Set a screen, roll hard to the basket, chase offensive rebounds, and play hard defense. That's what I want out of Paul. And every time he tries to step outside of that, it feels like he is exposed.
And if he is focused once he rolls and he stopped right there in the paint at the rim, he has to be confident. And because we've seen him do it, turn around, find that man in the corner. He's right where he's supposed to be on the wing. Make that pass, an opportunity for you to get a shot from behind the three-point line, a ball fake, maybe drive to the basket and finish off of just some good action there and some smart play from Paul Reed. Anything that you were encouraged by at all?
Yeah, I mean, I'm encouraged just to get some guys back. I think your point about Buddy is right. Even though he has struggled mightily and maybe shown you why you could get him for second-round picks, shown you why he has been a player who has come off the bench at times over the course of his career, I'm still encouraged because that skill set, I believe, is real. And I think he's going to fit well next to Embiid. But I do think there are going to be times throughout the season, or at least the next couple of weeks, where you go like, hey, he's a little bit out of place here playing without Joe. Like, he needs someone to create those shots for him. Even in Indy, where Halliburton is an incredible early offense generator and get him open looks, there's probably a reason he wasn't playing 35 per night and shooting. Like, there are deficiencies in his game, and they just become more pronounced when you don't have a guy like Joel to create shots for him. But I think what we have seen and what he's capable of is encouraging, because you know that's going to change once Joel comes back. So I agree with that. And DeAnthony, quite frankly, has looked, I think, a little bit better physically than maybe I thought coming back from that injury. I thought physically he has looked fine. Is there a little bit of rust? Sure, but I think he's shown you that when he's good, he still has a chance to help contribute, and I think that's been good.
We all silly like the mayor.